So now it's my honor to introduce today's speaker, Clay Stafford. Many of us already know him as the founder and CEO of the annual Killer Nashville International Writers Conference. He is also an award-winning author, poet, screenwriter, and playwright, a film and television producer, and a director, showrunner, and actor. He has sold nearly 4 million copies of his works in over 16 languages. We could go on, but we're going to save time for the conversation. And we'll also put his website in the chat so you can get more information on Clay. So we've sent him a few questions to get started with, and then we'll add to those as we go. And so Clay, be very happy to turn it over to you. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you all for showing up on your Saturday. First of all, I just want to say thanks to all that you do in the Ohio Valley for promoting a community for writers, because that's something that's very important to me. As you know, as I told Pam prior to starting, I feel like this is old home week because I know many of the members who are there. Pam was kind enough to send me. We're going to actually have a conversation here. So anytime you have a question or something, I guess just put it in the chat section, and Pam is going to moderate that. Is that right, Pam? And
That is correct. Yes.
yeah. And so I really, this is promoted as a conversation with me. And so I truly do want to have a conversation rather than just, a boring lecture. So you did say I had an eclectic, and I want to thank you for saying it was a successful career. You said you wanted me to tell about my journey and then other endeavors that I'm involved in, and then maybe how I manage all of the things that are going on. In terms of my journey, I really started without a clear path. And I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to do with all of the educational outreach things that I'm involved with, is trying to give people a clearer path than what I had. Many of you know my story, that I grew up in an Appalachian type community. And, writers were few and far between there. And I really wanted to tell stories. Stories fascinated me. I think it goes back a lot to my grandmother Stafford, who was just full of those Appalachian stories. And she was constantly telling me new stories. And some of them I think she invented just to keep me entertained. But they were all supposed to be real, mostly centered around like the Southern Gothic type, with, the ghosts and things that they had seen in the hollows or hollers, as they called them. And so that from a very early age, I knew that stories were something that I was interested in. And I was also, I found, as I've gotten older, I look back on my past, and I think one of the things that attracted me most is the underlying, what makes stories work. So, excuse me. So it's not so much just the storytelling, it is the academic side, because I do continue to lecture at colleges and universities about the academic side of storytelling. And I think it's, to me, how stories are put together is very important. I think every opportunity that came to me from growing up, not like my relatives had, well water and drawing well water, and some didn't have electricity. So it was really kind of rural. So books were really kind of the thing. And I, so thankful to Molly Miles at the Spring Creek Elementary School, who, had a library replete with lots of stories and recommendations for that. And so I think every opportunity that I've had probably has come from saying yes to learning, yes to discomfort, and just having that clear vision of where I wanted to go, because I knew living in that environment that there was more. I could see it on the television that there was more. And so at an early age, I started trying to pursue more, but it came all from saying yes, and all from saying yes to discomforts that came. And I I had an eclectic mix, and if you look, it says Clay Stafford did this and this and this. It's really just because I had this kind of philosophy of bumbling through life, I think, rather than having a definite plan. So writing, filmmaking, teaching, producing, publishing, all of that kind of came together. And I think what that really comes down to, in terms of something you can take on your own, is that uh, careers aren't always built on straight lines. They're built on layers. We try something, it works, it doesn't work. We try something and we learn a great deal, and hopefully we learn equally from the things that worked and didn't work. But I think success, and when we publish something or produce something, and we really think, this is going to take off, this is going to be wonderful. But I really think that success doesn't come from one big break, and I think sometimes we lose focus of that. I think it's about consistent, and then I'm probably going to emphasize that throughout this conversation. Consistent, um, small steps that stack up over time. I'm involved in a lot of creative endeavors, writing, of course, books, essays, columns, uh, spec film scripts, teaching, mentoring, speaking to writers, and developing, Killer Nashville. I've also got Killer Nashville magazine, which I hope all of you are subscribing to. It's free. It's full of resources from writers such as yourselves who are writing, and we're always looking for writers. So if you would like to contribute to Killer Nashville magazine, we'd love to get your stories, your poems, your essays, your craft articles. So we would love to get those. I've got an upcoming podcast that's going to be available everywhere on all the podcast streaming things, talking to writers. As most of you know, I do a lot of interviewing with well-known writers as well, and now we're moving that into a podcast. Um, and I'm doing something really exciting. I can't tell you a whole lot about it right now, but it's called Killer Worldwide, and it's going to be something that brings in really what I started back in 2006 with Killer Nashville International Writers Conference. I wanted something that was going to be global, and Killer Worldwide is really going to do that. And then, I put out a newsletter that I hope is educational more than self-promotional, because education really is important to me. I didn't have, growing up, a lot of people that I knew that could help. And what my whole career has been, in addition to doing creative output, is trying to create avenues that lessen the learning curve for people who are, excuse me, for the new writers who are coming in. And that's been very important to me, because everything that I've been able to accomplish came from mentors that I happened to meet from saying yes to all the opportunities. And I hope that I can be a mentor to people who are coming through. And then there's also the Killer Nashville University, which is the subscription service. And if you don't want to subscribe, every week we do one free episode that we think will be beneficial. So if you don't want to subscribe, don't subscribe, but go check out the one free presentation. And these are ones that have been gathered from or from Killer Nashville and other conferences. And believe it or not, I mean, it's just almost incomprehensible to me. We have 10,000 hours of educational instruction, and we're adding 10 hours, 10 sessions per week that are on there. And one of those is a free session. So take advantage of that. Other things that I'm doing, I'm really heavy in my work as a consultant with publishers and film companies, writers, and filmmakers who are working on projects, discussing story development and marketing and branding choices and industry business questions and those kind of things. So I think it's really important for all of you um, to think outside just sitting and being a writer, because I think creative people don't have one outlet. They have ecosystems, and I think it's very important that you develop that ecosystem, which then brings up the thing that Pam asked about managing time and organizing days. You have to be able to handle that. So I think the thing that's worked best for me, and something that I've had to learn because life easily distracts you, um, is to protect your creative time first. Don't leave it for leftovers. Make it a priority. There's mornings I get up and I go, oh, I want to do this, and then I ask myself that really important question of is is this the most important thing that I could do today? And sometimes they don't line up, and many times they don't line up. So I choose the one that really is going to make the most effect on my life, and then let the other ones come secondary to that. I think one of the things for me, I'm really tunnel vision. And so working in focused blocks on one thing at a time helps much better than scattered multitasking. And I suggest, when you do that, really delve into the depth of what you're writing and turn off all the phones, turn off the emails, turn off everything, and just focus on what you're writing. And I think if you write every day and hopefully write at the same time every day, the systems you create are probably better than motivation itself. So I think it's really important every single day to ask yourself what one thing moves the work forward. And we all got just X 24 hours a day, really. So you don't really need more time. You need clearer priorities for that. So hopefully that answered Pam's first question. Does anybody have any questions you'd like to ask me before we go on to the next one? Because I really would like to have this as a conversation. I like talking to all you because I know, like I said, I know you guys. So it's more like we're having a chat in the living room.
Bev, do you want to ask your question? Bev wrote in the chat that she'd be interested to hear your take on the current state of mystery publishing.
Is that directed at me? I'm sorry.
It is.
Yeah. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
We'd be interested to hear your take on the current state of mystery publishing.
Well, I think it's going fantastic. We're number two in terms of the genres. Number one is romance. I wish I could get into the romance writing. I think I could do. We could certainly make quite a living as a romance author, but I do believe in love and I do believe in romance. But as I told Lisa Jackson, I love your books, but those sex in the shower scenes, I just can't write that sort of thing with a straight face. So I'm not able to do that. So mystery, I think, is mystery and thrillers are the second category in terms of book sales, fiction sales. And so I think we're in a wonderful spot in terms of opportunity as well as, paying the bills. I think, and it seems to me from what I'm seeing, new imprints and new divisions and new calls for entries from publishers that I'm familiar with, they're increasing. So there is, and I think part of it goes back into what's the purpose of mystery? Why are people attracted to mystery? And you see throughout, let's say, the 70s, throughout the 50s, when there have been times of um, unease, uncertainty, people have tended to gravitate to mysteries, just like in times of sometimes when you're relaxing, they tend to gravitate over to westerns. But there's periods of time, then it's indicative that we are in a time of world uncertainty, and people are looking for something where the good guys win, where the incongruities are explained. And so I think the state of mystery, I mean, maybe I'm long-winded on your question here, but I think the state of mystery and thriller writing and it is incredible right now. We're in a really good zone, and I think everybody listening should take advantage of it because it's cyclic, and but we're in a great spot right now. So go for it.
We've got another question from Bev, and I've got a follow-up question to her question. But she says we hear cozies are more popular than ever. Is that true?
That is true. That is true. People are, and once again, let's look at what's going on. There's as we've gotten more extreme in world events, people sometimes want an escape from that. And so they're looking at something that's not quite so violent, not quite so graphic. And I've noticed through Killer Nashville that yes, cozies are on the upswing. And I think again, it's cyclic, but they're on the upswing, and you're in a very good spot for that. And it's also reflective that we're not relying on a third party. We're not relying on a detective to solve it. It's an average person who is solving the problem. Sometimes even if it's a cat, and so I think cozies, yes, definitely are on the upswing, and yes, we are in a very good time for cozies.
Well, my question is for a friend, right? So there's this continuum between cozy and, say, a traditional mystery with an amateur sleuth. And sometimes it's hard to know where your work fits in that time, in that range, I guess. And do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, how do we know, um, if we don't have the traditional, very cozy elements in our work. Does it fit in traditional or does it still fit in cozy?
And I'm going to give you an answer that you hate. Um, Write the story that's important to you. Okay, first of all.
Yeah.
And then, second of all, again, talking about the new imprints and the expansions in some of the houses that I work with and that I've seen. They're looking at more hybrid, more blended, more um, non-focused, and sometimes you can actually establish a voice by breaking out of that. It's not just another cozy, it's not just another traditional mystery, it's something with a fresh voice. And so I think that's something that should be relished. And if you have that ability and you have that voice, then I think that you probably really need to take advantage of that, because I think that's where you're really going to start your breakout and your forward movement.
Great. We have another question from Jeanette. She wants to know what was the lowest point in your writing journey, and how did you overcome it?
My lowest point, and I don't know that this is applicable to anybody other than somebody who's in the exact situation that I was in. But I was very successful, I think, in Hollywood. And it got to the point around the end of the 1980s that Hollywood shifted gears and started moving towards consensus in storytelling. And all of the people that I had previously known in the previous decade were all creative people, the leftover people from when we had the resurgence of Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, all of those great auteur storytellers. And the studios brought um, in as I guess the older executives kind of aged out, and but as it went along, the studios shifted to profit. It's always been a money making industry, but they shifted to profit, and those creative executive positions, crazily enough, were replaced with MBAs, and they started looking at what works, almost like stereotypical, what works in order to sell as many tickets or to sell a product as we can. And then they went even further and started doing market testing so that every director had to come up with like 3 or 4 endings and film them. And then they tested them, and they're still doing it, tested them with a market testing with these little counters that, the people, what do you like, what do you not like, and they press a button while they're in the theater sitting and watching. And then they go back and you have the director's cut, which was the first one, the one the directors want to do. And then you have the final cut that people see. Well, the final cut that people see, and it's even in the contracts, the studios can override the director cut. So working in that situation, I felt that creativity wasn't what it used to be, and storytelling wasn't. I don't believe that storytelling is a community effort. I don't think that it is a board of directors that can come up. I really think that storytelling is an auteur process, and you have one storyteller with one vision, and that's the story. And then some stories, just because the audience hits that button and says, I hate that ending, if you look at the story organically, the story had to end that way. It just had to. Even if everybody is disappointed with the way it happened, but it had to end that way because that's the way the author wrote it. And so the lowest point for me was waking up in that situation and going, this has turned into really a job. So I just packed up I was living on Bedford Drive in Beverly Hills at the time, and just called my landlord. And it was right after the Northridge earthquake too, which I'd previously gone through the Miami hurricane. I can't remember which one it was. And I had gone through the hurricane, and I decided that I didn't want to stay out there with all of that. So I contacted a friend of mine, Chip Diggins at Hollywood Pictures, and he sent me back to Tennessee to do some location scouting and see what was going on in Tennessee. And that I loaded my dog up, and she and I traveled across the country. And when I came to Tennessee, I decided that, maybe Hollywood isn't where I want to be anymore. And that's where I switched over to looking more into education, but that was the low point for me because I really love filmmaking, and I still really love consulting and advising. I still write spec scripts and get things optioned. But in terms of actually being in that process, I felt like I was leaving something behind. So that was a low point for me. In publishing, you don't yet have those MBAs controlling the string. You've still got great editors, and so I'm happy to be over in the publishing side right now. But that was my low point. When it starts feeling like a job, something needs to change.
I do have another follow-up question. You mentioned you grew up, you have an Appalachian background, and I've heard Silas House speak so many times about the storytellers and his family and what an impact that had on him as a writer. So I have to know, what part of Appalachia did you? I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, and I'm always curious of what part of Appalachia someone is from.
Eastern Tennessee.
Eastern Tennessee. Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
very good. We have another question about publishing, but I think we could move on to the
To the
next,
next questions. Okay.
and we'll
You
come back to that. We'll come back to that. I won't forget you. Don't worry. So,
okay? Well, Pam asked me about talking about the most important skills that I had leveraged to accomplish what I've accomplished, and she asked me to give a advice to a younger me. So, first of all, in terms of the most important skill, I think it's persistence. There were times that I did. I mean, you guys know these stories, but there's times that I slept in my car in Los Angeles because I had no money. I was living hand to mouth. I had an old typewriter. I had reams of paper. This was way before word processors, and I really was so adamant about telling stories that I could live that way, even as long as I had my typewriter and my paper and was able to submit to people. And so I think persistence, not necessarily talent. I've always said that when I never lost sight that in Santa Monica under the banyan trees, there are people that were a lot more talented than I was. It was just they had not persisted. They had not reached out. They had not built a community. And so they were under the banyan trees. I was living in Beverly Hills, but it was never lost on me that there was probably more talent under those banyan trees than was between my ears. So I think that I've seen that true throughout for everybody, that it's really persistence, um, and reasonable expectations, but persistence, not talent, that's really going to move forward. And I think the greatest thing for me is finding mentors. I mean, I've worked with some incredible people, and I can't believe that they spent time on this stupid kid from Tennessee, but they've were always very supportive and opened doors for me. And some of them I had to do things like I really want to come. I'll just get you coffee. Whatever you need, I'll do that just to be able to watch, just to be able to learn. And they're like, well, we don't have it in the budget to hire another person like that. And I said, I'll do it for free. And so I crashed many sets, um, and learned a great deal from these various really high profile. I mean, people who by name. And it was because I was constantly looking to open the door to those mentors, to those teachers, to that community that was telling stories and doing what I wanted to do. And then I think um, after I started working in television, you get an air date. And so everything has to be ready to go. So I think my ability to finish things when it's due, it's due. There's a phrase, in filmmaking, on time and on budget, and the whole industry lives that way. When you've got an air date on CBS, uh, they got to have the thing in there. So it's up to the writer to get finished. So the ability to finish things and on time and on budget. Um, I've never worried about looking stupid, and I think many people are plagued with that. But there was a willingness to learn publicly in front of everybody and risk being imperfect has been very vital to my growth. And then listening, actually listening, not arguing. When I started out, I would write something and somebody would give me a note. I mean, some of these people, really big people would give me a note, and I would say, well, the reason I did that is because, and the thing is, the reason that they don't want to talk to me more about my script is because I keep justifying it. So I think that I learned and corrected those situations so that we kept those doors opening, that listening to mentors, to readers, to reality is probably really important because it's a great teacher. So I think probably, skill compounds things. Persistence keeps it going. And then my advice to my younger self is that don't wait for permission. I have never waited for permission. I don't take no easily. I sold a project to someone that I went into their office and I pitched the project, and they said, sounds like a good project, but I think we're going to pass on it. And I said, well, you probably haven't thought about it well enough up to this point. And then I left, and I would stay gone for a month, and then I would come back and pitch it again. After about six, and I don't know the exact number, but after about six pitches, they said, let's do this. And so it's not taking no, it's not waiting for permission. I think the things that are our best work probably start before we feel ready. And that's important, to take those risks. I think it's important to build, if I were telling my younger self, I would say build relationships early. What you guys are doing is fantastic. Build relationships early because community matters. Writing is a business, so learn the business sooner, not later. And I think you can see in for those of you who've been in Killer Nashville, I think we look at that craft, we look at that community, we look at that business, and I think that it's so important, and it's been the foundation for my teaching in order to be able to do that. And then really going back to the question about this, do you write a traditional, you write a cozy? I think you should trust your voice sooner, because your voice is distinctive. And the minute that you start writing what you feel compelled to write, what you love to write, just walk on faith that the audience will be there. That the film, I can't remember the name of it, but if you build it, they'll come. Just build it, and build it in your voice. And I wish that I had known that younger, because I was trying to, when I was starting out, I think everybody follows the same pattern. But when I was starting out, I was trying to follow other people's success and look at what they're doing and try to find a formula for what they're doing. And I think that it's more important to, instead of looking exterior, to turn it in and look deeply in yourself and see what your voice is there. I don't think that we ever get to a point where we are too late in our careers. Matter of fact, I think we're probably earlier than we think we are, if we will just be willing to write what we feel in our heart needs to be said, needs to be written, and then have the courage to put it out. So that answers those questions. Do you have some questions back for me?
We do have two more questions in the chat. We'll start with Jeanette.
Can I say a shout out to Lynn? Hey, Lynn, so good to see you.
Always. You could always shout
Always.
out to Lynn. You don't need permission for that. We have a question from Jeanette. Do you see a generational preference between the sales of the physical book, audio, and ebooks?
No.
Okay.
No, I think all from the perspective of selling, I don't think there's a generational issue at all. I think everybody's looking for a great story. On the flip side of users, I think everybody still has their preference. I've got a 15-year-old daughter who really wants hardbacks. And then I've got a son that wants to read most things on his tablet. And then I've got some older friends who love their tablets. And then there's people like me uh, who still want to read hardbacks because they lay open better than paperbacks. And then they also, I don't know, there's just something about having that book in your hand. I'm still one of those that, you get the book and the first thing you do, well, here's a good question. Don't everybody answer, but just think when you get a book, what's the first thing you do? You know what I do? I smell it. And I put it up and smell that ink and that paper before I ever start using it while it's fresh, before it accumulates the smells of the room or whatever. But it's just something about that smell that just makes me like anticipate the moment that I'm going to dive into that story. So the answer to your question is no. I think it's important to be on all of those platforms because you have people from all different ages and all different demographics that have their own reading preferences. And I think that's wonderful. I think the most exciting thing for me was when all of that came out is selling projects more than once. So you sell a project in hardcover, and then they decide they want to go to the beach. They don't want to take the hardcover, so then they buy the paperback, and then on their commute to work, they don't really want to fool with the paperback because they've got their computer up or their iPad open. So then they decide to download the electronic thing. And there's been numerous things where I've sold several projects on multi devices to the same person. So it's very nice. I love it. So yeah, we need to exploit all of those.
I'm guilty of that. I have because I wasn't finished with a book and now I'm traveling and I've got to finish the book. So there you go. Uh,
Yeah.
we've got a question from Rhonda. She says, you mentioned the consensus philosophy for filmmaking. A lot of us use the script writing outline beats like Save the Cat by Blake Snyder to outline. Do you think that arose out of the NBA takeover thing?
Yes. Yeah, I think it started back if and I could be really, I mean, you can go that back and say, well, it was Plato or Aristotle, I can't remember, that did the beginning, middle, end and started the philosophy of what a story should be. But then you had Sid Field back, and I can't remember when he came out, maybe the 70s or something, when he wrote his book and made a lot of money diagnosing the three-act structure. And then following that, you've had a slew of people who've written craft books that create some sort of formula that's guaranteeing you that you're going to have an exciting story. And I think that all of them have some value, but I think they're also written because writers are looking for an easy formula. Writing is so hard, and it's fun, it's gratifying, but I mean, really, if you're digging deep, it's so hard. And any kind of little formula or something you can grab onto, you want to do that. I don't know that it's best interest to say that I am a loyalist zealot to any particular one of those, one of those formats. And there's several good ones out there, but I think what the important thing is to do is to take all of those and look at them conceptually, not so much as a Bible of I need to do this, this, and this, and I have to. I think just citing one of those, I think somebody said on page 10 of a screenplay, you have to have the theme stated. And I'm like, what? Why you have to like manipulate your book so that you have your theme stated on page 10. What's that deal? So I think you look at that, and to me, I go, somewhere in there, probably the theme needs to come out, but I don't necessarily know that I have to adjust my entire screenplay to make sure that my theme comes out from a character or something on page 10. And that's just an example. I think you can be, if you're a loyalist to those, I think you run the risk of writing formulaic fiction. But I think they have validity as long as you look at what is the concept behind it. Because for those of us who've written more than one thing, we start from scratch every time we start a new project. It's not like, we think, I've even gone through the process of taking notes of how I did this and pulled it off successfully so I could be more efficient the next time, right? Uh, the notes don't work. They don't transfer to the new project because every project requires its own storytelling. Every project, if you're going to be, trying to push yourself, every project is going to be plotted differently. The characters are different, how they're going to be revealed, the nature of the crime for us, mystery writers is all going to bring in a completely different way of plotting and character development. And I'm taking a long time to answer your question, I guess, but I would look at I would read them, and I would say, what is the underlying premise that we need to have? We need to have, we need to have a catalyst. Need to have a normal world. We need to have a catalyst. It doesn't necessarily have to be on page 18. But we need a catalyst, and you just use that as your general framework, but not subscribe loyally and legalistically to the things that they outline. But those books sell well, and I know why people are writing them. They're writing them as much to share information, and they're writing them as much to make money, because writers are looking for those easy formulas, and the last thing we want to do is write to formula.
Great, great. We're ready to move on to the next question about productivity, which you've already touched on some, and I just wonder if you have more you'd like to add on that next question we have.
Yeah, a couple of things that work for me is writing at the same time daily when possible. There's been so many studies. Not all of us can do it, but there's neurologically. I mean, I look at all. I'm always constantly looking. How can I push the envelope? How can I push the envelope? How can I be better? And I used to write in the evenings and during the night. Robert Randisi and I, we talked about how we like to write through the night. But I read several studies in neuroscience that the prefrontal cortex, I mean, I'm getting way out here, right, is more active in the morning than it is at any other time. So I deliberately switched my writing time, and it made an incredible difference. And so every morning I show up at the same time and write daily. So I'd say find your ideal writing time. And science says it's right when you wake up, but that's not always possible for everybody. But right at the same time daily, every day. And I have to stress every day, because it's the same as shooting free throws for basketball. You show up every day and you shoot 2 hours of free throws, and when you get in the game, you hit the shots, and if you skip it, it shows up in your game. And writing is no different than anything else. I think that for productivity, lower maybe the barrier to starting. I do that by writing to a certain point, and then when I get to that end of the writing period, the end of the day for me, I note where I stopped, but more importantly, what I'm going to do the next day, where I'm going to pick up. So when I sit down with my cup of coffee, all I do is pick up where I've already predetermined, and it takes a lot of that starting. I always say, painting. You want to paint a room. It seems like it takes more time to get the paint stuff ready, the brushes and the paint and all that, and then the cleanup afterwards. So that really most of the time is spent in prep and wrapping up rather than an actual production of painting the room. And I think writing can be the same way. So if you can eliminate those barriers and know this, I'm going to go ahead and prepare my paint tools for tomorrow. When I sit down, I just start writing immediately. I would uh, focus on momentum, moving forward, not perfection. Sometimes people, I've talked to writers who say, I just keep, I'm on the, how's your manuscript coming? Well, I've rewritten the first, uh, chapter, 10 times and I'm still working. I've almost got it. We'll move on from the first chapter and come back and save that for the rewrites. So focus on the momentum, not perfection. And one of the best things for productivity for me is breaking the big work into small tasks that I can accomplish every day. And I think a lot of that comes from prep. I do my thinking time in the evening. Um, and that switches from coffee over to iced tea, and I sit outside and reflect on what I want to accomplish and how I want to break that down. And I'm very much uh, into setting small goals and then small tasks within those goals, and I lay them out. And I know it's not like I'm doing something that's just off the top. Oh, I need to do this, or I'm reacting to something. I look and I literally put everything I do, no matter which project I'm working on, whether it's a writing project or a development project. I write it down into those small tasks and what logically works. And that saves me from going in the wrong direction, because on paper, it's easy to fix. It's like, building a house with architecture. It's much better to have the blueprint in front of you than it is to just go build the house and then kind of go, ooh, that didn't work. I need to tear all that down and start over. So I think breaking things down into small tasks, and then um, protect your creative energy. I am very adamant that I need to be in that zone when I sit down to write. So life, life, you cannot interfere with me right before my writing time. You can beat the snot out of me, after I write, but when I'm before I'm going to write. So I think protecting your creative energy like it's valuable, because it is. Um, for your mindset productivity, I think productivity probably isn't about speed so much as it's consistency. I think it's sometimes writers again want that formula, like how many words a day do you write, that kind of thing. I'm not sure that it's about speed, but about the fact that you're just doing it. I think we need to stop comparing our output to others and become centered, look in, and focus on what we can turn out that's good. Whether it's a little bit, I've known some very, very well-known writers who write a page a day, but it's a good page, and it doesn't need to go back and get a lot of revision. And then they go to the next page, and they go to the next page, and that's how they write their books. I would take inventory weekly, not like hourly or like, how many words have I gotten today or whatever, but just look back over your week at a given point. I think Stephen Covey talks about sharpening the saw, on Sundays or something. And I think that we all weekly need to look back. I am meticulous about keeping a journal of what I've been doing. And I look back over my week and I go, ooh, I see where I wasted time that could have been spent elsewhere. It might have been, semi-important, but it wasn't really fully important for the big goals. So I think that's thing. And then probably I would go back to, Hemingway's sort of an addendum to Hemingway's thing. He always said, finish what you start. But I would say for me, it's finish more than you start. Once you get into it, go deep and finish more than what you started. So those would be my addendums to that question. Other questions, follow-ups?
We do.
And you're doing a great job, Pam.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you. This has been marvelous, and time is marching on, unfortunately. So we do want to move on to talking about Killer Nashville, and we've got a great question. For those who haven't attended Killer Nashville, can you give us some broad brush strokes or what it is, the panels, the agent roundtables, the networking, et cetera? And then we'd already talked about we for sure wanted you to talk about Killer Nashville with us.
Yeah, in terms of this going, I think one of the best things to do is to go to the website, just killernashville.com, and scroll through all of the offerings. We've got people from, I've got, I know there's some Killer Nashville veterans here, so I'm preaching to the choir in terms of most of you. It's we bring agents in. We do get people who get to sell manuscripts, and we have a track that goes throughout the every single day. There is a forensic track, and we do have I call them the CSI junkies. They come and they just stay in the forensic track, the whole time while they're there, because we have some really stellar people who present in that forensic track. We've got uh, I think it's like 170 different sessions over the course of the 4 days, which is an incredible amount. Sometimes we're running 11 sessions concurrently each hour. And so there's a huge amount of selection to choose from. And luckily now, because I've started Killer Nashville University, all of it, because the big problem when people came was there's like two things that I want to see, on this particular time block. And now all of them are now over on Killer Nashville University. So you can attend all of those sessions. We have critiques, which are invaluable. We have editors, developmental editors, who critique manuscripts. And then I think there's an incredible amount of wealth of information that's offered over the course of the weekend. As all of you know, I mean, we get great accolades from Publishers Weekly for Killer Nashville. We get and Sisters in Crime, by the way, has been a supporter since the very beginning. So you guys are supporting it. So it's that's you know about Killer Nashville, but the writer magazine said we were the top writing conference in the U.S., which was really, really cool. And I think a lot of it comes from content, and we rely on our attendees for that content and for their generosity in sharing. And so I think depending upon we have marketing and publicity and branding sessions for people. We try to accommodate, because I think we can learn from everybody. I learn from debut authors. I learn from longtime old timer writers when I'm doing my interviews and talking to people. And I think we all can share and learn from each other no matter where we are in the process. So I think probably the thing that I love most, because Killer Nashville started in 2006 as a group of 70 writers from all over the country. We just got together to hang out for the weekend. That's how we started. That was Killer Nashville 2006. And the feel and vibe of Killer Nashville has never changed. We may take over an entire hotel. As a matter of fact, we take over 3 hotels now in the area. We have 500 people every year. We cap it at 500. I think it's good to keep it low so that people are there, but then also the fire marshals won't let more than 500 people into the facility. So I'm limited by the fire marshals, so whatever. But anyway, we're all put together in embassy suites, and the way it's designed, the whole thing is around an atrium, and you have to pass writers all the time, publishers, agents, editors, publicists, attorneys, and you're passing these people all the time. And then we have our networking breakfasts and our networking lunches. And then we have the Killer Nashville Awards, which is networking as well. And then we have, people making new friends and hanging out in Nashville on Friday night to kind of get to explore. And I think probably the biggest thing that we do is encourage that sense of community because people have lifelong friends that they've developed there. As you know, for those of you who've been, it's one of the criteria for the people we bring in is that you have to be able to share your business card with your contact info. And that goes for the forensic people and the writing people and everything, because what we really want is people to develop those long-term relationships. Because flipping back to the first part of my discussion here, I knew nobody starting out, and it was a rough climb. And if we can make that easier, if we can set up those relationships, if we can have someone who's already doing what you want to do, reach down and help lift you up that next step, that's what we want to do. And that's what Killer Nashville accomplishes.
That's marvelous. That's marvelous. Does anyone have any other questions about Killer Nashville? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to put um, in the chat the link to our YouTube channel. The recording will be there in a few days. So if you want to grab that link to the Derby Rotten Scoundrels YouTube channel, you can
Yeah.
grab out
And
of
let me say something else too, if you don't mind. There's a lot sometimes, because of logistics or finances or something, you can't go to Killer Nashville. Every week I, through my newsletter, put out an educational thing. If you read my newsletter, it's not so much about promotional about Clay, it's about educational things. And I do videos and I do uh, essays. I do different things to help educate writers. Killer Nashville magazine comes out in installments every single week. That's free. So all of that stuff, if you can't attend Killer Nashville, still take and the free session on Killer Nashville University every week. Take advantage of the free stuff because we've got some incredible writers who work with us throughout the year who attend Killer Nashville, who are writing for that. Of course, I write, all the Clay Stafford newsletter stuff, but subscribe to all of those. And that way you can get those free materials at home without, ever having to invest anything at all, even if you can't attend Killer Nashville, because our mission is to help writers and to eliminate or expedite that learning curve.
Well, Clay, this has just been absolutely amazing. I can't wait to watch the video again. And I've taken notes, but I know I'm going to take more notes. Thank you so much for joining us
Oh,
today.
thank you, Pam. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for what you're doing in your work. It's vital. I think we support each other, and you guys are doing an amazing job of it. So thank you so much.
Well, unless someone has a final burning question, I think we've gotten to 12:59. So that's
Man, time has flown so quickly, or it did for me. I hope it did for you.
oh,
I hope you weren't cross-eyed sitting there going, "Oh Lord, let's get to
oh, it's been
again."
marvelous. And then if you can see the chat, you're getting so many good comments from folks who
Oh,
really
thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much. Again, like I said, my tech skills are not that good, but thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that.
Well, thanks so much. And everyone, please watch for the YouTube video so you can watch it again. And it will be publicly, Clay gave us permission to make that publicly available. So you can share that link with your friends so they can watch it as well.
Yeah,
So
I think, and I think it's important like that. If you do find something that is beneficial, share it. No matter, I'm not talking about just this, but share it and do encourage and help other writers.
great. Well, Mickey, is there anything else you'd like to add? Or are we good to disband here?
I think we're good. Thank you so much, Clay, for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it. Very informative, and we look forward to seeing you at Killer Nashville in August.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Great.